This is in the lessons in Derech Mitzvosecha, the Mitzvah Viduy and Teshuva, page 86. So after he explained what is the damage that's done to an Avera, and how we can change that through Teshuva, and the main thing was that through Teshuva, all the blemishes are repaired. Anything that was lacking is refilled, so to speak. And the reason for this is because we draw down a light from Keser, which is infinite. And as a result of that light that we bring down, it's able to, it's not a limited light. So therefore it could make up for anything that was gone or lost or missing or damaged. But there's a difference between the two levels of Keser. That's what he explained. And in the first part of the Maimon, he explained how we can change things through the Teshuva, what the actual Teshuva itself accomplishes. But now he's focusing on the last thing that he explained, that through Teshuva we draw down this infinite light that comes from Keser. In Keser, there are two levels. So one of them, what it accomplishes, it says it blinds the eyes of the Chitzanim, that they could no longer nurture from Kedusha. And the second one, what it does is that it fills up all the gaps and repairs all the damage. That's as if it never happened. So now he began explaining that based on this we can understand another thing, and that is, why is it that in this world Teshuva helps, and not only Teshuva helps, but we see from the Gemara that Teshuva can be just a sort of a thought, just a small thought that takes a moment, and that could be Teshuva that can change the person's status. And in the world to come, it says that Teshuva doesn't help. Whatever the person has when he leaves this world, that's where he's at. And there's no Teshuva there. What's the reason why down here, I would think just the opposite perhaps. Down here, it's more of a physical world and more of a limited world. So therefore, this should be a world where Teshuva should maybe help. And up there, if it's a more spiritual world, less limited world, it would make sense that that's a place where you can do Teshuva. I also want to add something, and that is, even though it says here, and he's going to explain why in that world Teshuva doesn't help, because only down here we can make those changes. That's one of the reasons why it's so significant when people down here do things for a neshama that's up there. In other words, when a person passes away, the family member who says Kaddish, people give tzedakah for the person's neshama. People study Torah for the person's neshama. Why? Because when you do things down here, it does change the person's status up there. It does have an effect on the person's judgment up there. In fact, we're coming to Yom Kippur. One of the things that's done on Yom Kippur is called Yizkor. The Yizkor is something which people who unfortunately lost their father or mother, in shul they say a special prayer where they're basically saying that they're giving tzedakah for the neshama of their parent. And one of the explanations is it's sort of a exchange of services. The neshama up there, who's close to Hashem, prays for us for a good year, and we down here give tzedakah for the neshama, which means when we do things down here for the neshama up there, that has an effect. So when he says here Teshuva doesn't help, it means Teshuva that the neshama itself will do doesn't help, but others down here could do things for the neshama up there. Page 86, yeah.
So there are people that probably don't have to put down here. If we do Teshuva, but randomly to come and monitor it.
You probably could. I don't know exactly how that would work, but Hashem knows our thoughts. If you say to Hashem, okay, I wanted to choose somebody, it probably could work as well. Generally speaking, it's not necessarily, it doesn't have necessarily be a relative. In other words, anybody could give tzedakah and say, I'm giving tzedakah for the neshama of this person. I'm learning Torah for the neshama of this person, and it has an effect on the neshama. You're asking a question, could I say to Hashem, I'm doing it, and use it towards someone over there? I don't remember seeing anything like that, but it would make sense that it should be something. I remember once, years back, when the situation in Russia was not what it is today, behind the Iron Curtain, use that no opportunity to study Torah, to do mitzvahs. So the Rebbe at that time said that people who live in countries where they could study Torah freely and do mitzvahs freely should have in mind when they do something like that, that it should go for the merit of someone that's there. And that could also be without a name, so maybe it works in this way too. Okay. So page 86. After he finishes with the question, starts with the answer. The reason for all this, it's explained someplace else at length. Where's that someplace else? It's a mimer on the pasuk Tzavas B'nai Yisrael. It's called B'nai Lachmi V'Ishai, and these are two maimarim from the Alter Rebbe, where the Alter Rebbe explains and answers this question. But I'll bring this here, and the Tzemach Tzedek is writing this. I'll bring it here in a brief way to explain this concept. And the basis is as follows. There's a passage that says, Olam Chesed Yibana. The world is built through kindness, or with kindness. Or the world is based on kindness. The simple meaning is Hashem creates the world with the attribute of kindness. But he's going to explain that there's something more specific here. The world up there is related to Hashem's attribute of Gevura. And the world down here is related to the attribute of Chesed. Why is that? Meshukasam, as it says, is the pasuk in Ashrei, the idea of Bnei Adam Gvureisav Achvei Adam Achusay. Hashem makes known to mankind his acts of Gvura and the glory and the splendor of his kingdom. As it says in another pasuk in Tehillim, Morav Tuv Koshet Zafanta, which means how abundant is your goodness which you have hidden away for those who fear you. It's also hinted, alluded to in Igeres Teshuva Perek Yud Beis. In Igeres Teshuva Perek Yud Beis chapter, we know there's a third volume of Tanya which is called Igeres Teshuva. It's all about Teshuva, and this is the 12th chapter. In that chapter, the Rebbe says something regarding also the difference between this world and that world. We know that Chassidus, generally speaking, does not focus on the subject of punishment, but the Alter Rebbe brings something there to explain a certain point, and then he says and says what's the advantage of a person remembering whatever it is that they did wrong, and then he says that there's another thing to think of when a person has any kind of suffering, to realize that, of course, Hashem doesn't chas v'shalom punish us as a taking revenge for whatever I did wrong, but anything that happens in that sense is really a process of cleansing, a process of healing. In other words, just like begashmias, if a person did something that this requires procedure, procedure is painful. It doesn't mean that the purpose is to punish them because they did something wrong. They did something wrong. As a result of that, they got hurt. As a result of that, they need to be healed. And the healing process is an operation, it's stitches, it's a certain kind of procedure, which is painful. Same thing spiritually. That any kind of procedure which is painful is really a process of healing and cleansing, spiritual cleansing. But the Alter Rebbe adds something and says, it's brought down in the earlier writings, that a small, tiny, little bit of suffering in this world substitutes much, much more that would have been in that world. And he uses an interesting analogy. Of course, this is based on the opinion in Torah that the sun revolves around the earth, and the sun is the one that's moving. So the Alter Rebbe writes that when you look at the wall and you see the sun, you see the shade, and every hour, every minute, really, every second, but every hour you can see it moving. Why does it move? Because the sun is moving. When you see something moving here, one fraction of an inch, how many miles did it move up there? Tens of thousands of miles up there, but over here it moved just a little tiny bit. So the Alter Rebbe explains that therefore we should know that when we do a little tiny bit down here, it substitutes and it's equivalent to hundreds of thousands and tens of thousands of miles up there. And by the way, this is both in the positive and the negative. There he's talking about the negative, meaning that if a person, it's also positive, that if a person is chas v'shalom suffering, that he has an inguinal toenail, which is, God forbid, not the worst kind of condition a person can have, so my toe hurts me. But that little bit of pain substitutes so much more that would have been if the person would have to go through the cleansing process up there, it would have been much more pain. It's also brought down in the positive. The Alter Rebbe says the following: we know that when a person does a mitzvah, we just learned in this mimer actually, when you do a mitzvah, you draw down this light, that light from Keser, and you affect all the spiritual worlds. But guess what? If there's a little tiny thing missing, it doesn't happen. For example, I have a mezuzah on my door. If there's just one letter of all the letters, and that one letter, the ink is rubbed out in one little spot, the mezuzah is pasuk. I put in that little bit of ink, it's kosher. What does it mean spiritually? It means without this little bit of ink, nothing is happening. With a little bit of ink, it creates a storm up there in the spiritual realm. And all it is a little tiny thing. There's certain things in halacha that say in the Beis Hamikdash, if the Kohen does it with his right hand, it accomplishes tremendous things up there. If it does it with the left hand, it doesn't happen. So this is based on the fact that this is where we can see how this world down here, thank you, that this world down here, chesed means that there's something where we see Hashem's kindness in the sense that a little bit of something here can accomplish so much more there. So this is related to the point that here, one little moment of thought of tshuva could change a person's status to be considered about tshuva, and then everything that would be wiped away, just a thought of tshuva. And up there, that doesn't help. They have to go through much more of a serious process. So what's the difference? So generally speaking, saying the difference is here, the light of chesed is shining, over there, the light of gevura is shining. Why do we say that up there is gevura? Page 87. By the way, today with modern technology, it's very easy to understand. Years ago, probably it was very difficult to understand. But today it's very easy to understand that, that in technology, all you need is one little thing to be moved a fraction of an inch to the right or to the left to make a difference in a satellite up there or other thing that can make a huge difference. And all it is, I just moved something one notch. Why? Because it's not just a notch. There's a connection here. And this little thing that I moved 1 inch activates something which is much, much more than what I just did. So the in that world, that's a place where the Hashem's light shines in an open way. And allows people to understand Hashem. In fact, that's what it says the Neshama saying Gan Eden get their pleasure. They don't have pleasure from entertainment. They don't have pleasure from food. They don't have pleasure from all those things that we know down here in this world that give us pleasure. Their pleasure comes from understanding the greatness of Hashem. Just like we know with ourselves that sometimes you have a certain question. Academically, you don't understand it, and someone explains it, and you get to understand it, and you feel a sense of pleasure from the fact that now, wow, I get to understand this subject. Just multiply that about 1 million and who knows how many million times, that understanding something so amazing like God's light and God's greatness, that's what gives the neshama pleasure. So up there, Hashem allows his light to be comprehended by the creations that are up there. But this can't happen. The only way it's possible for that light of Hashem to be revealed, that we humans, or at least the neshamas up there, or even the angels up there, should be able to comprehend him, the light has to be contracted and hidden. Hashem's light, which is relatively infinite, for that kind of light to be grasped and comprehended by creations that are finite, the light has to go through a process of tzimtzum. Otherwise, it wouldn't be possible. And that's what it means when it says the glory of his splendor of kingship. The sphere of Malchus, which is the 10th sphere, that's the sphere that conceals the higher light and allows a more limited light to shine. In other words, in every world, the last sphere is Malchus. Why is that? Because the higher world is so much higher than the lower world. So the light of the higher world, in order for that to evolve into the lower world, has to go through a process of tzimtzum. And Malchus, that's the sphere that does the tzimtzum. Within a person, that's generally speaking, would be like speech. When a person speaks, basically, I'm allowing things that are going on in my mind and in my heart, and I'm sharing that with someone else. I'm revealing it to another person. But the truth is that whatever I'm revealing to the other person, it's still not what I experience inside me internally. Words are only able to, on some external level, communicate to the other person what I'm feeling, but not what I'm really feeling can never come out with words. You know, it's like now in Israel where there are Baruch Hashem times where hostages get free and they walk over with a microphone to a family member. So how do you feel? Whatever they say, you can't even use the word fraction. It's nothing to what they're feeling. Even though they say, I feel amazing, I feel this and I feel that, they can say all the words in the thesaurus, it's still not what they feel, cannot come out. That's inside. So words also are a form of a tzimtzum. They, on one hand, they allow what I'm feeling inside to be communicated. Without words, I can't communicate it. On the other hand, how does it communicate it? Because the words conceal the light, which is the emotion or the concept that's much deeper. I'm not talking about concepts like 2 + 2 = 4, but it's a deep concept, and someone who's very deep and understands things on a very deep, abstract level, explains it to somebody who's simple, also has to go through the same process of tzimtzum. So here it says, the glory of Hashem is revealed through his malchus, through the attribute of gvura. This is the level which is also called Malak Olam. Kabbalah, or to bring this in the language of Kabbalah, it's called Pnimi, an internal light. So we know one of the one of the terms in Chassidus, you probably can't turn more than 2-3 pages in any Chassidic book without the word Mamala Kalamim and Seder Kalamim, or Makif and or Pnimi, which means an encompassing light and a light that penetrates internally. So the light, this light is a light which penetrates internally. In this world, the light we have is the encompassing light. In this world, godliness is concealed, and the reason is because what shines in this world is Hashem's encompassing light, which is known as Seven Kolamim, because this is a world that cannot comprehend Hashem like in those worlds. So that's because it's an encompassing light. It's not a light that is able to be penetrating the brain, the understanding of people down here in this world. Nevertheless, this very fact is the reason because everything is hidden in this world. That's why the light of Hashem that shines there could be from a higher place. In other words, when the light has to be revealed, it has to be from a lower place. Otherwise, it can't be revealed. It can't penetrate. It can't be absorbed in the mind and the intellect of the souls and the angels that are up there. Or makif means an encompassing light. It's affecting this world, but in a way that it's not really penetrating internally. So it really doesn't matter the fact that we're not capable of absorbing it, because it's really affecting us on a more encompassing way. This light is not the symptom of chasadim. And this was going to be the basis to the answer why in this world things could change, and in that world things can change. In other words, this kindness of Hashem, that a person could live an entire life, the Rambam writes, a person could live an entire life of not observing Torah, not observing mitzvahs, but even at the last moment of his life, he sincerely says to Hashem that he's doing tshuva, it's all erased. That's the kindness of Hashem, that one moment and one thought could change everything. Over there, because it's a world that there's Gevura, so Gevura means things are measured, calculated, everything has its place. So therefore, that's a world where you can't just turn things around. Things are what they are and where they are, and you can change. The fact that here something could change, it's what it is Hashem's chesed. But this is connected to the fact that he's going to explain down here is more of an infinite light that's shining. Infinite doesn't have limitations. As a result of that, the person is also not limited, and he can turn around from being one kind of person to another kind of person. That world is more of a finite light. And that finite light shines in a finite, limited way. And because it's finite and limited, therefore, if a person's in a certain place and has a certain status, it's limited. That can't change. We'll give a mushal, which will need an explanation, but let's do it inside. Yeah.
It clarifies, so encompassing internal light is the light up there, or like down here, infinite light.
No, it goes like this. The encompassing infinite light is down here, and that's why it's hidden. And the light that's limited and revealed is up there. When I say revealed, it means that up there they could perceive godliness. They understand it. That in order for that to happen, Hashem has to contract his light to enable them to understand it. So the light there is more limited and measured and contracted. The light here is not revealed anyway. This light is because it's a light coming from a more infinite place, but the fact that and therefore it's hidden, so we can't perceive him the way they do. But as a result of the fact that it's an infinite light, there are things that can happen here that can't happen there. Yes.
Continuing with this, but to say something is, you would say something is an or market, and or market isn't it like a thing, like so the Quran is an or market.
or is not for profit, that's different types of level.
Wait a second.
I think I confused myself. Stovit is the encompassing light,
Right.
and then
So kalam or makir are like
the same.
So
Oh, right.
there's probably a reason why they would use this word here and that word there, but it's the same idea. Or pnimi and mamalakalam is also the same. Or pnimi means a light that penetrates and that's internalized, and mamalakalam is the same thing. Again, the difference is that there's a light of Hashem, just to be very general, there's a light of Hashem that's sort of given to each person accordingly, which means the reason why humans, animals, trees, things are inanimate, mountains, all the differences in the world means the light of Hashem is designed differently, and therefore the end result is a different kind of creation, with different kind of characteristics, with different kind of features. So that's Mamala Kalavin. That's the light that becomes my personality, or the animals. I can't use personality, animality, whatever you want to say. It becomes what the animal is, it becomes what the tree is. That's what determines the differences in the world. Sefer Kalama means a light that's encompassing, so it's not a light that's it's like the sunlight to some extent. Makes no difference whether the sun is shining, if there's a heap of garbage or there's a heap of diamonds, it's all the same. The sun doesn't shine differently in my house than your house, in the street, in a shul, in the opposite of a shul. It shines everywhere the same. That's called makir. It relates to everything. It's more encompassing. It doesn't really relate to each individual accordingly.
That's so good.
That's so good, but that's Urma. Yeah, that's the example of it. The truth is, this is like you said, there's another Mamorim that explained this in length and depth. This is just the general idea. There's a story in Gemara. One of the sages passed out, and then when he woke up, he said that he passed out and he saw himself in the upper world. So they asked him, "What did you see there?" So he said, "I saw an upside down world. Whatever is down here is up over there. Whatever is up here is down over there." A lot of interpretations of what that could mean. Probably on a simple level, it means that those people that are, this one is somebody very big and very famous and gets a lot of honor, but up there, those are the ones that are all the way down. And some of the people here that are, put down and they look to be like unimportant, up there, they're the ones who are important by Hashem. But also, it's based a little bit on the principle. What?
Not the same, like it's an even like for certain things.
That world is a world of truth. So you see things, Be'em is the way they are. Down here, there could be people that are running a country, they're very famous, and down here, the way people look at it, whoa, this is something they look up to, very high up there. But up there, where things are emes, that person might be all the way down. And the other person, who is nobody special down here, could be very special up there. But it's also connected to what we learned before, that the higher something is, the lower it falls. So there are things that are very low here, but really their source is very high. And there are things that are high down here, their source is lower up there. But when he answered him, he said to him, no, you didn't see an upside down world, you saw a pure world, you saw a clear world. Over there you saw clearly everything, what it really is in its essence. Down here, things evolve from up there, and when they evolve, it's not so clear. Up there, everything is clear. What does that mean? Shekol davar al makom bo. Every entity comes to its appropriate place. Commercial, and this is going to be a little bit complicated, but we'll try figure this out. Commercial is chalkos evari haguf b'kemesish. For example, the division of the organs in the body in a human being. So there are different organs. Every organ is different, has a different function. Rosh, yodayim, raglayim, the head, the hands, the feet. Sa'ara is the hair, Tzipernayim, the nails. Harei kol echad muvdul atzmi. Every organ is separate and different. Again, it has a different form, different shape, and different function. Page 89. V'ef shel asas meyad regular rish. You can't have a head turn into a leg, and a leg can't turn into a head. Each organ is what it is, separate. Similarly, up there in Shemayim, everything is clear what it is and where it belongs. This physical world is the place where things are being worked on, but they're not worked out yet, that each thing is sort of developed. That world is a developed word, if you want to use the term. Here's where we're working on developing things. Up there, it's not it's a developed world. This world is the Fnei Habir Adayin. He called the Esek Bohim Molechas Habirurim. Our Avodah in this world is Hashem created a world. We see good and evil mixed together. We see all sorts of things. And our Avodah is to separate the good from the evil, to separate the spark from the physical, separate Kedusha from the Klippa, which means things are not developed. And our Avodah is to do that, to work on developing it. Shemizbarim and Itzutis, Shenaflum, Zayin, Malkin, Kadmor, and Detayu. We're supposed to refine the sparks of godliness that fell from the 7 kings of Torah. Remember, we learned the other day that it says in Chumash there were 7 kings that came from Esav, and it's alluding to the 7 spheres of the world of Tohu. So down here, the world, the sparks that came from that world are in everything that's in this world, in every thought, speech, and action. And in everything, there's a godly spark. But in Tzuta Shenaflu, the sparks that's in it is Tachlis HaTeiv. They're really good. But they're intermingled with the negative things that fell there. And therefore, it's a world that we have to work on developing. He says this will be like a mushal of the drop of semen before the baby is born, just the original source that contains all the organs of the body of this child that's conceived from this. The head, feet, hair, nails, all as one. At this level, its entire makeup can be transformed. These are the words that need to be understood. And the foot can be elevated to the level of the head. I have to look this up, exactly what that means. But what he's saying is that in the source, where everything is included, you don't see things separate. It's all one big cholent. And there, from the source, things could come out differently. Once a baby is born, and there's hands and feet and eyes and nose and mouth and teeth and hair and bones and whatever, then everything is what it is. Now it's developed already. Before it's developed, there's still possibility that things could develop differently. But basically what he's going to, the point that he's going to make is that down here in this world, it's a world where things are not developed. And therefore we have the kaya, we have the power to turn things around, because it's not yet set and fixed and formed. Something which is not formed, you can make any form you want out of it. Once it's formed, then you can't change it. Saying that world is where things are formed already. And once it's formed, everything is what it is. And down here, it's more abstract, because it's this light of Hashem that's infinite, that includes everything, but nothing is really developed. And therefore, here's a world where we can change things around. Now, next few lines, he just explains what this is in the language of Kabbalah, which will be even more difficult to understand. But like I told you in the beginning, that we're gonna not focus so much to get the Kabbalah part, try to get the main point that he's bringing out. Haberudim hebem izbarim adei mevarer, v'mevarer Shem Mash u'mevarer Shem Ban. In Kabbalah it says, remember we learned about the 2 names of Hashem, One is called Ma, one is called Ban. One is the name of Hashem that enables us to refine things, and Shem Ban, that's the source of all the things in the world that need to be refined and need to be developed. So the potential for Shem Ma to be able to change things and turn things around. Now it's connected to the Shem Ma. I'm just going to say the words, but I don't think I'm going to go into explain it because I think it'll just be more confusing. But if I just say the words, it won't be confusing. שנתק ונבדל מסדר השתלשלוס, והשכן שמבן שבשורש השתלשלוס כנסקר לאל. וכן בכל עולם הדרום אמר לו שמהו כנס מקיף, ואיזה בכנס מקיף גודל ערב רב מועד וכנס איסוף, ואיסוף הוא הכל יוכל, כן לקח איסוף ותכל לזבר הברור והטבע הרע. אם כן יוכל לשרץ גם כן מרגל ראש בירסה. So we'll go back down to the bottom of the page. That's the part that we can understand a little bit more. This is the mystical secret. Whoever said that oil could burn, he can also say that vinegar should burn. This is a famous story in Gemara. There was someone called Rabbi Hanina ben Dosa. He was a very big tzaddik. In fact, the Gemara says that he was someone who was accustomed to have miracles. The stories told about him are like Baal Shem Tov kind of stories. So one of the stories was that he told his daughter to go light the candles before Shabbos. And she cried to her father, said, we have no oil left in the house. So her father said, so you have no oil, take vinegar. The same God that said that oil should burn, he can also say that vinegar should burn, and she put in the vinegar and it burned just like the oil. What does that mean? It means Hashem created the world in a way that there are laws of nature. Oil burns and vinegar is not something that burns. But that's because Hashem developed it that way. The same Hashem who said that oil should burn, vinegar should not burn, he can also change the rules and say that oil and vinegar should also burn just like oil. That means if you reach into the core, you reach into the source before things are sort of developed, then you can switch it around the way you want. And he was a very big tzaddik, so he had that ability to do that. V'chein kosuv, this is also alluded in another place in the Torah. Ahevchi hatzur agam mayim. Hashem transforms the stone into a pond of water. Which means Hashem could make a stone turn into water, because the fact that a stone is a stone, a rock is a rock, and water is water, is because Hashem decided that his energy should develop into a rock, and this should develop into water. But the energy itself of Hashem and the light of Hashem itself is really abstract. And if Hashem would want, he could decree that this same energy that before turned into a rock should now turn into water. And therefore things change around. Yeah.
When we see a miracle, does that mean we're seeing a little flash of sort of,
Yes, every miracle is Sefer Kolam manifesting. Because in Malach Kolam, everything is set. And everything is in a slot. This is this, this is this, this is this. This can only go down, this can only go up. This can be moved, this can't be moved. But when you talk about Sefer Kolam, because it's not limited, then there are no rules. And therefore it says from that end of things, Hashem could take the same object that he created one way, turn it around, and become something else.
how are we able to handle it? Our limited.
Well, because even if it's Soyukon, but Hashem still allows it to flow somewhat within the context of the world. It's not just Soyukon as revealed. But he's going to explain, just like Hashem could take a rock and turn it into water, just like Hashem could take vinegar and make it like oil, that's how Hashem could take a person who did an Avera and become a tzaddik in no time. Things could turn around completely. Okay, we'll chew this over a little bit better tomorrow, Mirz Hashem, to be continued. Yeah. Welcome to everybody. Thank you.